I might have bit off more than I can chew today. What's going on, everybody? I'm going to tuck a little napkin in here because I pivoted. I had a plan for pizza today, and then I found this place here in Champaign. It's called DP's Dough, and it has calzones, which is like, you know, a pizza folded in half. And I said, you know what? I haven't had a calzone in forever, and it's a new place, which we don't get very many new places here. And I'm a little terrified because, first off, this thing is heavy, and it's already like, you can see like that's grease. It's not good. So we're gonna see. Oh my God, this thing is gonna be breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the next week. It is massive. Okay, all right. Got a little marinara dipping here. Try not to get this all over my lap. Let's see. There's some pepperoni. That's not bad. Ooh. Little piece of jalapeno there kicked in. That's pretty good. I don't really have anything to compare it to because I haven't had a calzone in years. But I'd say it's like a 7, 8 out of 10. All right. I think we're going to be okay not spilling us on ourselves. Have we got a conversation for today, boys and girls? We're going to talk about one of my personal favorite conversation topics in poker, which is variance. And usually when we talk about variance, I just kind of hammer everybody with the, play small fields. Oh, man, that's good. Okay, maybe this is like 8 out of 10. So I got this with pepperoni, bacon, onions, and jalapenos. And what's really cool about this is the bacon is really crispy. So you get this like crunchy bacon inside. That's really satisfying. I don't know that I like this more than pizza, but it's pretty good. Usually I just tell people to play small fields and stop trying to, hit home runs in these 3, 4, 5,000 person fields. But today I'm actually going to give you some really good tips on how to overcome variance, even if you want to play in those bigger fields. All right. That was better than I was expecting, honestly. That'll be good for dinner later. Okay. Hope everybody's doing well out there. I know Twitter's down, so I'm sure some of you are frantically trying to figure out what the hell to do with your day now that you can't watch the toxic cesspool that is Twitter Nation freaking out. For me, it's a blessing. I wish that the poker world wasn't so involved on Twitter, because honestly, like, if the poker world wasn't so heavily connected there, I would just never go back. But I hope everybody had a really good weekend. I had my first like real weekend in God knows how long. I took advantage of the downtime to beat The Legend of Zelda and Dragon Warrior on the old NES, going way back into the day. So it was a good fun chill weekend, and now we're getting ready for another big week of content. Daniel Negreanu is going to be on the Rec Poker podcast tonight. I'll be producing that. And then we've got Chase the Dreams podcast tomorrow night. I got a new YouTube video coming out on Wednesday. A whole bunch of shorts coming out this week. And I've started working on the Global Poker Masterclass that'll be coming out hopefully at the end of this month. So lots going on, but things are going well. Let's get into it. All right. So, variance. The ultimate nemesis, right? Okay. So, a lot of people will say they feel like they run worse than everybody else in poker. They feel like they are the most unluckiest people on the planet. Like their aces hold less than everybody else, and they're struggling to win more than everybody else, and they never hold when it matters. And there's all of these idioms around not running good. And there's some reasons for it. It's not just negative bias, okay? So I'm going to start this by saying, if you feel like you're running bad all the time, it's because you are. And there's a couple reasons for that. First, when you're playing against bad players put their chips in bad spots. They put their chips in behind very, very frequently. And when they put their chips in behind very frequently, guess what happens? You have more opportunities to get it in good, which means you have more opportunities to get sucked out on. So when you're playing in better fields, you don't get as many 80-20s as you get when you're playing in weak fields, which means you don't get sucked out on as often. Your brain can't separate the fact that the equities are different or how frequently you're getting it in good. All your brain recognizes is, well, I'm getting sucked out on left and right. Well, you're getting sucked out on 20% of the time, but when you have 25 opportunities in a session to get sucked out on, as opposed to 10, you're going to get sucked out on a lot more, and it's going to feel like you're getting run over by people playing crappy hands. So understand that when you're playing in bad games, which you want to be doing from a game selection standpoint, this is going to lead to more suckouts. Then the other thing is, there is a lot of ways to experience variance, okay? So think about all the ways that we can potentially run bad. You can get pocket aces, get them in against pocket eights, and somebody sucks out on you and wins an 80-20. You can get bad card distribution where you're just not getting aces, you're not getting kings, you're not getting ace-king, you're card dead, you're having to fold over and over and over again. You can get bad table draws where you're playing in a soft field, but all the good players in the field end up at your table. You can get bad flops, bad turns, bad rivers where you're getting ace king, but every time the flop is queen high, or you get pocket kings, and every time there's an ace on the flop, or you have a flush draw and it's always bricking out, or every time you flop a set, a four-liner hits on the river. You can have short stacks that are constantly doubling on the money bubble or a final table. Ever got to a final table with 4 short stacks and every single one of them doubles up and you can't get there? You can have situations where you do get strong hands and everybody folds. Every time you get aces, you open and everyone folds. You can't get to a flop. Those are just a few of the many ways that you can run bad. The variance can kick you in the ass. And this means that if you're somebody who is fixated on negative thoughts, or you kind of focus on the negative side of things, guess what your subconscious gets to do? Your subconscious will find the one category that you're running bad in, and it'll hyper-focus on it. And what's even more difficult is your subconscious always wants there to be some sort of justification, right? We don't like losing. That's obvious. We don't like failing. It's not fun. And so our subconscious doesn't like that feeling, and it's very good at figuring out a reason why we're not winning, why we're not being successful. So you get in a tournament, doesn't go the way you want, and your mind's like, oh yeah, I had aces in that one spot, and my opponent folded the big blind, and he never folds the big blind. And if he wouldn't have folded his big blind and we would have played a pot, I probably would have doubled up, and then I would have made the final table, and then I probably would have had a decent chance to win the tournament. And then it ignores all the other things, all the other reasons, all the other situations where you had control of the situation and could have done things to have a better outcome in that tournament, to focus on the one thing that actually was completely out of your control, to say, hey, not my fault, not our fault. Team Rob, we did what we were supposed to, man. We got our aces, we opened them, big blind folded to a min raise. It's the big blind's fault that we didn't win that tournament. And so because there's so many reasons and ways that we can run bad, and our subconscious is so good at latching on to them, you can literally live in this cycle where you feel like you are always running bad because there's always one area of your life, or sorry, your poker game, that you are running bad. But the reality is there's also at least one area of your poker game you're always running good, and our minds aren't trained to focus on that. And so this creates this perception that we're always in a state of running bad. And you probably have met people, we all do it to some extent, but you all have at least one person in your life who is freaking annoying because every freaking conversation is them talking, oh, I'm running so bad this week. I'm running even worse this week than I did last week. And it just never ends. But here's the deal. Variance is a thing. You're never going to get rid of variance. It's never going away. But you can control variance. You do not have to let variance control you. This is super important. I'm going to say it again because it's super, super important. Okay? You can't get rid of variance, but you can control variance. You do not have to let variance control you. And it's this shift in mindset and focus that really changes the way we think about the game. And it frees up a lot of like brain power, RAM, right? Those of you that are like kind of in the computer world, right? You know, you got a disk drive and it has a certain amount of space, or your phone, your device has a certain amount of space. And when it runs out of space, it doesn't run well. You can't do any more things. You can't record new things, right? So you got to delete some data. You got to pull some pictures out of your phone so you can have more space to do what you need to do. And a lot of times our poker games have so much data in here that we're full. We can't free up any more space, so we can't operate correctly. This is why I'm so over the top about the majority of you ditching GTO, getting away from the solvers, getting away from the partial frequencies, clear all that data out so you can fill your head with a simple thought process that's easy to understand so that you have more space up here and more freedom to focus on other things that are important. Like, what are your opponents doing? What tells are they telling off in a live environment? What tendencies do they have in an online environment? There's no room to think about those things if you're so bogged down in, you know, whether I'm going to use 33% or 66% or 125%. And, you know, the solver said, you know, it's 50% here, 50% here. Let me grab the randomizer. Let me look at my second hand on my watch and make it. You can't focus on those things. And variance is one of those things that if we get so overwhelmed by it, if we're taking the time to count, you know, this is a great one. And I've done this before. Oh God, I had aces 5 times today and lost all 5 times. Why are you counting? Why are you wasting the brain space to mentally track how many times you've had aces and how many times it's gone bad when there's so many other better things you could be using with your brain power, right? It's so inefficient. So we got to clear this out. We got to clear this out. We got to get a good grasp on variance, understand how we control it so it doesn't control us, so we can free ourselves up to play our best poker. So how are we going to do that? We're going to talk about 5 ways today that we can overcome variance. I'm going to drop some gems here. I don't care if we got 50 people or 5 people. I'm just going to spit truth. And this is truth that you're not going to get a lot of other places. Because a lot of other places don't want to talk about the real meat of poker. It's all theory. Theory. God, let's be done with theory. All right. Number 1, how can we overcome variance? Number 1, generate more fold equity. Okay? Think about this. We talk about winning pots, losing pots, bad beats, all the things that happen. You win 100% of the pots where your opponent folds before showdown. That means there is a 0% chance of your opponent sucking out of you and a 100% chance that you realize all of your equity. You actually realize more equity than you have when your opponents fold. So the more fold equity you can find, the more you can bring that line up in your graph, the less variance you're going to experience. Now, this is not an excuse, so do not take this out of context and be like, all right, I'm just going to start blowing up pots. You know, I flopped top set and there's a flush draw out there, so I'm going to bet 4x pot and get all the flush draws to fold, and I'm just going to take the pot down right here. That's not what I'm advocating for. In fact, when we talk about fold equity, a lot of times it's not the big pots and it's not the big value hands that we're trying to generate the additional fold equity in. We're trying to generate the additional fold equity in spots where our opponents are making it pretty freaking obvious they don't want to play this hand. All right? So the two ways that we're going to generate more fold equity and reduce our variance. One, just having more aggression, especially in the late stages of tournaments. We need to up our 3-bets, small 3-bets to attack people that raise and then fold. Small check raises to attack people that c-bet and then fold. Small raises in position to attack people that c-bet out of position too often and then fold. Having a higher c-bet percentage in general versus players who do not float wide enough. Having a higher late position opening range. How many of you are opening 53% from the button when it's fold to you? How many even know what 53% from the button looks like? I'll give you a hint. If you're not opening king 5 offsuit from the button when it folds to you, you're too tight. And that feels gross. King 5 offsuit? Really? Yeah. It's a profitable open. And the way we do this is we need to, very early in these tournaments, and especially for those of you that play online and have the advantage of note taking, you need to separate people into two groups, callers and folders. It really can be that simple, because the majority of players are going to be people that call too much or people that fold too much. Now, obviously, if you're up against a person that calls too much, we're going to have to be a little bit more careful about how we try to generate fold equity against that type of player. We're not going to expect that we're just going to barrel and they're just going to fold all the time. And so now we also have to think about the types of hands that we barrel with. But there are plenty of players in these entry-level games who play fit or fold. They're out there. They're out there in droves. And these fit or fold players have been playing the same fit or fold style for 27 years. It never changes. They're not going to defend a check raise or a 3-bet or a c-bet unless they have a really, really strong hand. And we can just run those players over. But how many people do you have tagged as fit or fold right now in your clients? Do you know who those people are? And when you spot them, how aggressive are you at attacking them? See, we're so focused and fixated on all the old school ways of thinking where we're shark scoping people. We're looking at ROIs. We're looking at average buy-ins. We're looking at all the different information, trying to figure out like where people are at and what country they're from. Oh, country is super important. Are they from Brazil? Are they from Russia? Are they from China? Blah, 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 blah. And it can literally be as simple as, this is a person that when I check raise is going to fold 90% of the time. This is a person that when I 3-bet, they're going to fold 90% of the time. This is a person that when they c-bet out of position and I put a small raise in, they're going to fold 90% of the time. That's all you need to know. When you find those players, that's the only information you need. Because you can just get a ton of fold equity from these players and print, period. So figure out who the callers are, figure out who the folders are. And then the second way we generate fold equity is by attacking capped ranges. I talk about this a lot in the Ramp Poker training course. If you haven't, for the love of God, go to ramppoker.com, get the 10 free lessons. They're right there, completely free. Give you a sample of everything that's in the Ramp Poker Core training course. Check it out. Get some free material on how to approach flops on offense and defense. It's great stuff. But we talk a lot in that course about attacking capped ranges. And a capped range is just a range that doesn't have strong hands in it. When you are up against a range that doesn't have strong hands, you get to pummel it. So, well, how do you know that they don't have strong hands? Because they tell you. They literally tell you. And the way you know you're not good at this is if you love checking down hands. If you're the type of player that it goes like check, check, flop, check, check, turn, and you're like, yeah, we're going to go check, check, river, and you're happy about it, you're screwing this up. Because by the time it goes check, check, flop, and check, check, turn, you tell me what pot size bet your opponent's going to call on most rivers. Because again, a pot size bet, they got to call 50% of the time or we auto profit. So tell me what hands they're checking twice that's going to be able to call 50% of rivers when we pop bet. It's not going to happen. So when we see our opponents give us strong signals that they're capped, these are great places to win small pots. And this is the Rob Gardner gospel here that I just keep screaming from the rooftops, begging somebody to listen to me. Because profit is so available in 2025. If I could just find a way to like osmosis my brain into people. I want to like shake people like, guys, girls, listen. Stop trying to bluff the massive pots. Stop trying to bluff catch in these ridiculous spots. There are so many little pots that your opponent will literally be like, here, take it. I don't want it. I have crap. Breathe on the pot. Throw a chip in the middle. You know what? Don't even bet. Just pretend you're going to grab chips so I can fold. I've actually seen that happen live. I've actually literally seen people hold their cards ready to pitch them in the middle. And as soon as I grab for chips, they muck them. I love those people. I usually buy them a drink. We have to get better at that. Like, go after these small pots where nobody's interested. Get into the habit of attacking them because your opponents just are not going to adjust. In these entry-level games, they're not going to start having a strong checking two streets range. And there's other things that we can identify. Again, in the course, it talks about all of these different spots where we see that players are capped and we go after them. Yeah. I mean, small stabs, big stabs, it depends on the situation and what sizing is going to generate the fold equity you need. But there's lots of spots where our opponents are like, I have nothing or I have very, very weak hands. And we don't go after those spots. We've basically, again, been conditioned to be excited about showdown. Like there's some weird payoff in our head where getting a cheap showdown is awesome because now we don't run the risk. I think it's because we're scared that, you know, if we bet and we get raised, then we'll never know. We don't get to see their hand. And like there's this fear of like not being able to potentially see the river and see all the cards and see everything face up. So like because of that, it's like, oh, I get to show down. And we just stop thinking about ways to win pots. When I do attack and then get slow played, I always feel bad. How do you just get over that? Thank you for the question, Misplays for Fun. It's a really good question. So when that happens, we need to take a step back, okay? And ask ourselves, what did we miss? Now, when I say what did we miss, I'm not applying any fault to the situation because sometimes you just don't have enough information yet, right? Sometimes someone's new to the table or they're, someone we haven't played with very long. We just haven't had to see the opportunity. But our number one goal in the first hour of tournaments and even in the first hour of cash games is we want to be paying attention to all the hands we're not in as best we can. Obviously, if you're 10 tabling online, and you're putting a big session and you're not going to be able to hyper focus on all the tables. But as quickly as humanly possible, we want to separate people into the thinking and capable players and the not thinking and not capable players. And the percentage of people who are going to be thinking and capable and on the level of really sneakily slow playing a really strong hand is going to be a really small percentage of the player pool. So I would say in general, if you run into that spot, you probably just ran bad. It's probably a lot of unfortunate luck that you happen to run into the, 5 or 7% of players who might flop a set or might flop two pair and check them. The average player, when they flop a strong hand, they want to get chips in as fast as they can, especially if the board is a little dynamic, a little scary. There's some draws out there. They don't want to risk checking back and letting their set get sucked out on the turn. They want to pile chips in. So it's not going to be very common that that happens. But one of the ways that we can help eliminate that is by watching some of these showdowns and watching some of these hands, especially live. You know, instead of like hopping on this thing, which I've been guilty of before, you know, it's like I get to the table, I'm bored, and I just want to like scroll through social media. I need to be watching those showdowns and trying to see, oh, wait a minute, that person didn't bet the flop when they were supposed to, and they actually had middle set. And when you start to identify those types of people, those are the people we obviously have to be more careful of, and we're not going to chase the fold equity against. On the flip side, though, if you see somebody that's like, for example, I talk in the course about people who call small bets and then shut down on turns, the one-timers, as I call them. Like there's these people that are like one time, where like they'll just call you with any two cards on the flop, hoping to hit something on the turn, and then when they don't hit on the turn, they shut down. Those people, you can like bet really, really small on turns, because they're either going to hit something and call, or they're going to miss something and fold, and the size of your bet doesn't matter. But you shouldn't feel bad, because what you're trying to do is add a level of aggression to your game that allows you to accumulate more chips before showdown, win more pots, which allows your stack to grow, so that when you do take that bad beat, instead of that bad beat busting you out of the tournament, the bad beat's only for half your stack. And that leaves you with a lot of chips, and you're still live, and tournament life is so valuable. So don't feel bad about it, because you're taking a step that a lot of people are not taking. You're taking that step of aggression, which is good. Now we just have to realize that that's a bad outcome that's not going to happen super often. Try to be as diligent as we can to potentially get that information ahead of time. But inevitably, sometimes we're just going to be wrong. You don't get to be right 100% of the time in poker. Great, great question. All right, so that's overcoming variance. Oh, and by the way, yell at me if I don't pull the outline farther up. I'm really bad about this. I can't display the whole document on the stream. All right, number 2 here. We'll get this lined up. Nope, that's number 1. Okay. Number 2. Win bigger pots. All right. So obviously we can stem variance by winning pots before showdown, getting people to fold, especially attacking the smaller pots. But we can also win bigger pots when our opponents aren't willing to fold. All right. And there's 2 main ways that we're going to do this. One, we just need to get greedier. On YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, I posted a hand quiz on Friday that I knew was going to stir some shit, because it always does. And the spot, you guys can go check it out if you want, at Rob Gardner Live on all 3. But essentially it was a spot where we flopped top pair, we turned a backdoor flush draw, and we rivered the nut flush, but the nut flush put a 4-liner straight on the board. And the question was, we had an SPR of 2, which means basically there were 21 big blinds in the pot, and we had about 40 big blinds effective. And the question was, what are we betting on the river? And I knew before I posted the quiz that I was going to have a lot of people in the 25 to 33% small camp and a lot of people in the like 66% to pot camp. I knew it. I knew before I even posted. In fact, I was so confident about it that I recorded the answer that same day. And I literally started the video that comes out, and I think in an hour, the result. It comes out in an hour, and I literally say in the first sentence, the 2 most common answers I got were 33% pot and around like 67% to pot. Because I just knew that was going to happen. And the reason for that is because, again, we've had all this data thrown at us, and we've got all this crazy information thrown at us. And so, you know, the 33% crowd, they're like, well, you know, we've got a flush and we've got the nuts, but there's a 4-liner out there and it's a scary board, and I want to get value from pairs and 2 pairs and all these hands that I need to get value from. So I need to go really, really, really small so that I can get people to call. And then the 66% to 100% pot crowd's like, well, this is a spot I'm supposed to polarize. Theory polarizes here, and I'm at the top of my range. And so what would my bluffs do here? If I had like the ace of clubs blocker, then I'd probably go like 3/4 pot to pot. So if my bluffs are going this size, then my value needs to go this size. No. And none of that matters. And I'll tell you why. For the small crowd, okay? I'm going to spoil the video ahead of time. For the small crowd, when you go 33%, we'll even make the math easier. When you go 25% pot on that river, you need people to call 8 times as often as you shoving in order to break even. So let's say when I shove 2x pot, I get called 10% of the time. That means when I go quarter pot, I need people to call 80% of the time to make the same money as I do shoving 2x pot. And I can tell you right now, nobody's calling 80% of the time there. You say, well, are they really calling 10% of the time? Yes, because literally I make this play 5-6 times a session, and oftentimes I get called multiple times a session when I make these big overpot value bets. They frickin' print. On these boards, when your opponents have a lot of hands that they can call and our nutted hands look disguised, we get to absolutely yeet all over the pot. Just as many chips as you can get in. They can't help themselves. And to the 66 to 100% crowd who's thinking about polarizing and balancing their range and what would my bluffs do and my value do, honest question. If somebody's going to call your pot size bet in the river because they think you're bluffing, do you think that they're not going to call your 2x pot on the river? Do you think your 2x pot bet looks even more fishy than your 1x pot bet? They can't help themselves. It cracks me up when I get in spots like this and I go 2x pot and I get called by third pair on a board with a flush draw that got there and a 4-liner to a straight. And I get called because it doesn't matter. They're not thinking about anything other than I have a bluff catcher. This would be a really sexy spot to pick off a bluff. I might be wrong, but man, if I get this right, I'm going to go brag to my buddies at work all day tomorrow about how I had the sickest bluff catch in the world. And if I'm wrong, I'm not going to tell them. So I'm free rolling. Call. And now we're winning a massive pot. Yes, exactly. Ginger nailed it. If they call small or big, why not make it bluffy and over pot? Absolutely. You are not getting enough value with your value hands. Yes, in better tournaments against better competition. And obviously, if you know the player you're up against is really good, hell, even if they're really good, they still can't help themselves sometimes. It looks polarized. You don't need to polarize. You absolutely do not need to have a 2x pot bluffing range. And yes, me saying this is a little risky because I'm putting it out there, but guess what? Do you know how many bad players are never going to see this? They're never going to know. So the 1 or 2 or 3 people who may learn from this, first off, I can see you're in the chat, so I'm going to adjust against you. But I'm telling you, like, this bet gets called all the time and it drives me nuts. Like, I get so frustrated, not with people, but with situations when, like, I see somebody get a nutted hand and there's so many hands that can call them. They're like, I'm going to go 2/3 pot here and balance my range in a way that will allow my opponent to call with maximum frequency. No! Stop! Literally, go into your Chrome right now, pull up GTO Wizard, log in, and click the delete this account button. You will make so much money just not paying $100 a month for the damn site. But then on top of that, not wasting the brain power of trying to play all this high level shit when you're up against an idiot who wants to give you their chips. Take them. What's up, Drewski? I'm not balanced, but I don't need to be because I'm not playing in games where I need to be. It's funny too, because some of the best memories I have of this, I won't dox anybody, but I can't tell you how many times I've been in Vegas with friends of mine that I've played with online and I've pulled this move and gotten snap called. And I'm like laughing because I'm like there's this like, I have to beat my friend mentality. Like, this bet works great against friends. If they don't know you're capable of this, man, you can make so much money just never ever bluffing in these spots. Not against Drew, because he's really, really, really observant. But against most people, the ego kicks in. They just have to call. So get more greedier with your value. The second thing we can do is you need to increase your river bet percentage, okay? And there's really two facets to this. The first is just river raises as a polarized play are so rare in entry level games. If you're playing 11, 22, even $33 tournaments on a lot of these sites, people just call on the river. Again, it's this subconscious desire to see showdown. They don't want to raise and risk getting re-raised. They just want to call and win pots. So against the average players, they're going to call no matter what your sizing is. And again, this is something you can take notes on, okay? Start with a baseline that when I get to the river, I'm going to bet the strength of my hand. I know this sounds crazy, but just hear me out. Start with a baseline. If I have top pair, I'm going to go, 33 to 50% pot. If I have better than top pair and it's a fairly dry board, I'm going to be going close to pot. If I have really, really strong hands, I'm going to go over pot. If I have second or third pair, I might go like 25 to 33% pot. If I have quarter, fourth pair, fifth pair, really weak, I might bet like 10, 15% pot. I might min bet my ace highs, but bet the strength of your hand and watch two things happen. One, very rarely you'll get raised. And when you get raised and it happens more than once against the same person, you simply make a note on it. You add a note to the tag. Okay, this is not someone I can do this against. Plain and simple. And then you know. But what's going to happen more often is you're never going to get raised. You're always going to get called. Okay? And you'll be shocked how many times you get called by worse hands. This is especially fun live. I one of my favorite things to do is get to a spot where I'm on the river. I know my opponent's capped and I have like fifth pair and I bet like 10% pot. And the guy immediately starts laughing and he's like, I know I'm beat. They do this. I know I'm beat, flicks in the chips, and then he flips over king high because he's getting a good price. He can't fold. I even had one time a guy did this. He actually threw the chips at me, not in like a provocative, angry way, but he knew he was beat so bad that he took the two chips and he literally flung them in front of me instead of flicking them into the pot. And then I flipped over like fifth pair and he's like, yeah, I knew I was beat, but I can't fold here. You can win a lot of chips by just having these thin river value bets. And the reason that we don't, in a good game against tough competition, the reason we don't have as many thin river value bets is because of that fear of inducing, is because of the bluffs that now get to come at us. But when your opponent doesn't have a bluffing range, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Now we get to put these thin value bets in and extract more value on the river. And then on top of that, there's this really crazy thing that happens, which is sometimes you actually get better hands to fold, which should never happen. But again, people don't understand the value of their hand in these spots. Yes, that's a very good point Ginger made. If you're going to do this and you do get raised, do not call unless you have a super strong hand. Because again, this is a very, very, very under bluffed spot. It just is not a spot that people are willing to bluff, especially when you're in position. Okay? Because when you're in position and you make a small bet, think about how crazy it is for an opponent to be there, sit there, check out a position, face a small bet, and be like, you know what? I'm going to turn this hand into a check raise bluff. Now, again, a check raise bluff in a spot where your opponent decided not to lead and decided that their hand didn't have enough showdown value to call. Even if a good thinking player is capable of thinking on that level, the number of hands that qualify for that got to the river, like, it's really, really hard to have a hand that gets to the river, doesn't have any equity, has the wherewithal to check raise, is confident that their opponent is going to put a bet in that they can raise and actually get to fold. That's a lot of ifs. It's just not going to happen at a high enough frequency. So while, yes, getting check raised on the river might be a bluff some percentage of the time, it's such a low percentage, especially in these low limit games, you just don't need to worry about bluff catching or anything. Very good point by Ginger. All right. The other thing we can do is we can do a little bit of bluffing. Now, for entry-level players, man, be careful with the bluffing. First off, you don't need to bluff to win in these games. You don't, okay? You can beat these games, these low-stakes games, you can beat them and never bluff. Now, bluffing, if you get really good at it, can potentially add some ROI to your game for sure. And it is a skill that you can learn and get better at, but it takes a lot of work. It takes practice. It takes working on your game. You really need a system. And a lot of people, they want to bluff on instinct. And while instinct is a factor in the game and it can help, it's usually laden with a lot of bias. And a lot of people just end up ditching kind of a logical approach to bluffing for like, I just didn't think he had it, or my pinky toe wiggled, or, you know, I just got this funny feeling inside. And we're really just like chasing the adrenaline rush, the cortisol or whatever it is, like we're going after a feeling. We're not actually thinking about the best way to win the hand. But if you're going to build a bluffing range, if you want to start somewhere with your bluffs, a great place, little tidbit here, great place to start with your bluffs, backdoor draws. When backdoor draws get there, they're great hands to bluff. Does anybody know why? Let's see if anybody's watched this video in the course yet. Why would backdoor draws be a good bluff candidate? How many people know what backdoor equity is? Yes, Ginger's got it. Backdoor equity, right? Backdoor equity is when we flop a draw that is only runner, right? So you have 2 hearts and 1 heart's on the board. So you need a heart on the turn and a heart on the river. Good players know what backdoor equity is. How many bad players really know what backdoor equity is? So how many bad players float with the goal of hitting backdoor equity? It's a pretty low percentage, which means when backdoor equity hits, you're less likely to run into strong hands and you're more likely to have a believable story. So that's one of the places you can start to get your river percentage up if you want to dip your toes into the world of the bluffing waters. All right. Number 3, cruising along here. I got to find a better way to do these outlines. Third way that you can kill variance is to increase your volume. All right. Now, that should not be super intuitive to most of you. You guys know the more you increase your volume, the less variance you experience. You get to overcome variance, right? But let's talk about some ways to actually make this work practically, because I think some people hear this and they get very frustrated. It's like, well, okay, yeah, increase my volume, but Rob, I got a job. I got kids. I got responsibilities. My spouse is not going to let me play poker 6 days a week or let me play 14-hour sessions. So I can't just play, 300 tournaments a week like you full-time pros who have all this spare time and free time. I get it. Okay. But there are ways that we can do other things to help us improve with our volume. All right. 1, upgrade your autopilot game. This is something Drew's actually talked about on his streams over the last several years that I think is super valuable. Everybody wants to focus on their A game. They want to focus on getting their A game as good as they can, their best high quality game. But if you really think about it, how often do we play our A game? Like if you played your A game for 12 hours in a day, you'd be dead. Like we don't have the mental capacity to absolutely lock in and play max focus, max energy poker for 12 full hours. Like we're not wired that way. So inevitably, we need to play. Some of our day needs to be contributed to this B game, C game autopilot. On top of that, if you play online and you play a lot of tables, you're never going to be able to play your A game anyway, because you can't give max focus to 6 tables, 8 tables, 10 tables. So upgrading that C game, where the autopilot decisions you're making, where the subconscious decisions you're making, where you have a split second, you're looking at a spot and you're just making a very quick decision with limited information, getting that part of your game up is huge. It's huge. Not only is it going to allow you to play better, but this is one of the ways, people say, well, how do I get from playing 4 tables to 6 tables? Because when I play 6 tables, I'm overwhelmed. The reason you're overwhelmed is because every decision takes you 10 seconds, we'll say. And now, when you have 6 tables, you need to make those decisions in 8 seconds. So every decision you feel like you're 2 seconds away from the answer, and you need to make that decision, and that pressure is mounting. And so more hands are coming, and then you're worried about folding, and then you actually do take that 10 seconds, and it screws up another hand because now you only have 6 seconds over here, and it's a very frustrating experience. People get frustrated, and they're like, I'm out. I can't do this. 4 tables is my max. But again, this comes back to preparation and the way we approach this game. This is why I built that poker course. Because if you simplify the game and you simplify the variables and you're practicing good game selection, you can get to a place where your decisions are like this. Where you look at a table, you know the spot, and in 2 seconds, you've made your decision. Now, is that decision going to be the most optimal, perfect decision for that exact situation against that exact opponent? No. But is that decision going to be a profitable one over long term versus population? Yes. And that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to bring the game down to a level where we can make very quick decisions, and we know that those decisions are going to be profitable over the long run. One of the things that I'm involved in right now is daily fantasy sports. And daily fantasy sports has a thinner edge than poker. Like a 10% ROI in daily fantasy sports is pretty good. And you'd be like, why would you chase a 10% ROI in DFS when you could be, you've got a 40% ROI in poker? I do both, but the answer to the question is, in DFS, I can fire like thousands of tournaments. So while it's only a 10% edge, I really get to get that volume up. And one of the things we have to think about is, if you autopilot, every time you get to a flop in position and you just decide that c-betting is your default, it's in the free video if you haven't watched it, and you go with it, you're making a play that is going to make money over the long term. You're going to make a play that's going to win more than it's going to lose. And maybe if you'd put a little more effort and energy and focus into that one exact spot, you would have increased your ROI by 5 or 10%. But when you don't do that, and now you get to add another 2, 3, 4 tables to what you're doing, you're still making more money. So we have to shift this focus of thinking that everything is about playing our best and figure out how to play efficiently. Upgrade that autopilot game. If it's not my course, find someone else. There's other people out there. There's coaches, there's learning materials, there's content creators on YouTube who are talking about ways to simplify this game. Get the hell away from the GTO stuff and find simple systems that you can implement, integrate, and execute. And when you decide to go play Triton, fire that GTO stuff up and get really good at it. But right now, if your goal is profit in these low stakes games, if you just want to stop clicking that deposit button every 3 days, every 5 days, every 2 weeks, you got to simplify things. Then once you've done that, you can start practicing playing more tables. You can start adding an additional 1 to 2 tables to what you're playing. You can even use it to get better, right? Like in outside of poker, when people try to get better at doing things faster, they will ebb and flow. You'll see people drop down, slow the game down, speed the game up, go faster. Sometimes when people want to do something at this level of speed, they'll actually practice it at this level of speed. So then when they come back here, it feels slow. So if your goal is to play 6 tables and you've played 4 tables all your life, drop down in stakes so you're not wasting your bankroll. Go down to like the $1 and $2 tournaments if you play 5s to 22s, and play 8 to 10 tables. And do that for a 4-hour session. Just fully knowing you're going to lose your damn mind. You're going to be like, holy shit, you're going to be clicking too fast. You're going to be timing out here. Just know it's going to be a shit show. But put a 3-hour session in where you're just like flying through 10 tables. Then go try to play 6 tables. It will change the way you think about having multiple tables. And every table you can add and still play profitably, now we're reducing that variance. Now we're starting to give ourselves more volume, more consistency. Even if it's only 1 or 2 days a week that you get to play, being able to add those tables in helps a ton. And the last thing we can do with this is lower our goals. Part of the reason that variance feels so uncomfortable to us is because we're always zoomed in. We're always trying to focus on the here and now, the opportunity that's present. And we have these ridiculously ambitious goals. You know, everybody wants to go to the WSOP and win a bracelet the first time they go. They want to go to a circuit event and win a ring the first time they go. And I'm always coaching people. People have come to me and said, Rob, I want to win a ring. Awesome. Great goal. It's a fun goal. Exciting goal. Tight goal. Build some content around it. It's a cool thing to do. But the way you win a ring is by playing 100 to 200 ring events. That's how you win a ring. There's no like grandiose, like magical, plan where it's like, well, if I use just this right strategy and I perfect this and that, and I spend 80 hours in these test programs testing my knowledge and all of this stuff, then I'm going to go out and I'm going to win a ring in my first 10 events. You might not make the money in your first 10 ring events. I remember a summer I went to Vegas, I think it was like 4 years ago. I got there on June 1st, and by June 17th, I had not made a dinner break. A dinner break with multiple bullets. I didn't make one dinner break in 17 days. Sometimes Variance kicks you in the ass. So you want to win a ring, you got to play a bunch of ring events. We got to lower our goals. Zoom out a little bit. Think more longer term, okay? And that will help Variance feel less aggressive in our lives. Because the reason we get this bad mentality, this bad mindset is like we're putting pressure on ourselves. It's like here and now. I got to do it now. I got to do it here. This is my moment. This is my time. And then when our life doesn't match our expectations, right? Which are completely unrealistic, now we get frustrated. We blame Variance, and Variance is the problem. And it just spirals out of control. So take the pressure off. You want to win a ring? Cool. Don't put a timetable on it. Just say, I want to win a ring. And understand that means you need to put a lot of volume in. You shift your goal from the actual thing you're wanting to accomplish to the thing that helps accomplish it, right? So, okay, I want to win a ring. All right. I want to win a ring. I need to play as many ring events as I can. So I'm going to look at the calendar. I'm going to figure out, you know what? I can take vacation for 3 circuits this year. What are the 3 best circuits to take vacation for? And then I'm going to need a budget, because the more bullets I can fire in those 3 circuits, the better my opportunities are. So what are some things I can do to raise additional bankroll? Well, you know what? I got all this stuff in my basement that's sitting there just collecting dust. You know what? I'm going to go on eBay, or I'm going to go on Facebook Marketplace, or I'm going to go on What's Not. I'm going to sell this stuff. And maybe it only gets me an extra buy-in or 2. Well, guess what? That is 1 or 2 more bullets closer to you getting that ring, right? And now, when you go to a circuit, it's not I have to win a ring at the circuit. Now it's I'm getting a full week of volume in. See the difference? See how much more freeing that is? One is like high pressure. I have to do this thing that's really hard to do, even if I play my best poker. The other is like, I'm going to accomplish something here, whether I win or not. Because I just know I need to get volume in. And if I get a full week of volume in here, then I have moved a huge step towards my goal. And then if the fates shine on me and Variance flops my way and I win a ring in that first week, awesome. Very cool. Now we can go on to whatever the next goal is. But if I don't cash a single tournament in that week, I know I'm 1 week of volume closer to where I want to be. So we got to lower those goals a little bit. All right. So we want to generate more fold equity to overcome Variance. We want to win bigger pots to overcome Variance. We want to increase our volume to overcome Variance. And you knew this one was coming. We want to target lower Variance games. Now, obviously, I've talked at length, if you've been around for any amount of time, I've talked a ton about smaller fields. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this note. Just note, Variance is exponential. For every 100 people you add to a field, the Variance goes up significantly. So 200 people fields have more variance than 100. 300 have even more than that. 400 have even more than that. Think of like the Richter scale in earthquakes. So I'm not saying you can't play 1,000-person fields or 50. You can. Just understand that the bigger the field gets, the smaller your skill edge gets, and the more you are hoping and praying that the cards work in your direction. So know that. But here's another one. Where can we find games that have more fold equity, right? Is there a certain site, a certain time of day, a certain format where you find more fold equity? I haven't focused on this in a while, so I don't have any like strong leans like, oh, if you play this tournament, you play this site, you're going to have success here. But I can remember times in the past where there were certain tournaments where on the money bubble or the final table bubble, people just shut down. You find that? You find a game like that? That is a gem. And this is one of those things, like, again, we want to start paying attention to, because I think sometimes we gravitate towards the games that we feel the most comfortable in. And there's a lot of things that go into what make us feel comfortable in a game, from the structure to the interface to the types of players we're seeing to like the style play. A lot of goes into that. But again, there's a lot of bias in that. You know, we talked at the beginning, fold equity, winning bigger pots, increasing your volume, right? You can find games that support all three of those mechanisms. You can find games where people fold more late in tournaments. You can find games where these big pot, over pot bets for value get called at a higher frequency. You can find games where you can play more volume because you can get more tournaments in a short amount of time. If a tournament takes 4 hours instead of taking 8 hours, you've just doubled the amount of tournaments you can play without adding tables to the amount of tables you can play at once. These are all things that factor in. Playing turbos. Turbos have a lower ROI, Rob. Yeah, they generally do. But guess what? You can play twice as many turbos as you can play regular tournaments. So that can be another way to increase your volume. Late regging, right? Some people hate the idea of late regging. I just love to play early in tournaments when I can collect chips and take care of the punts. I get it. I get it. There's value to it, but there's also cost, and you have to weigh both things. So deciding in your game selection, factoring in what parts of your game selection are going to benefit a lower variance style is another way that you can overcome variance. And then lastly, this is the one that nobody wants to hear. The way that we can overcome variance is by embracing it. Embracing it, right? There's two types of people in the winter, okay? One person is like, oh, I hate winter. It's so cold. I just wish it was summer, blah, 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 blah. And the other person just goes with it, all right? I know there's the third group of weird people who love to be snowed in and live in freezing cold weather, but we're going to ignore that group, right? It is what it is. The sun's going to make another, or the planet Earth's going to make another rotation around the sun. I failed science class. We're going to have summer. We're going to have fall. We're going to have winter. We're going to have spring. Instead of always bitching and moaning about what we don't have, embrace the season. Because running bad is not always a bad thing that we like to make it out to be. Running bad can add motivation to get better at this game, to work harder at studying, to work harder at growing, to work harder at learning, to work harder at how we approach things. Running bad can push us into breaks where we get to a point where it's like, I can't deal with the variance, and we take a break and we give our mind a chance to get fresh, to get healthy, to get a renewed view of the game. A break that we don't generally have the courage to take because we love this game so much and we're so addicted to it. We want to continually keep playing. Variance can allow us to commiserate with one another and work together on ways to get better. There's a lot of good things that come from variance. ROI comes from variance, right? We talk about small fields versus big fields. Which field gives you a better ROI? And the answer is big fields. The bigger a field is, theoretically, the better your ROI can be. Which is why, like, if we had infinite time and infinite money, we would only ever want to play the biggest fields because that's where we would make the most money. That's where we would have the biggest ROI. That's where, you know, everybody uses this term value. Well, oh, I can win $1 million for $400. It's really good value. Yeah, it's really good value if you can play it 1 million times. If you're only going to play it 3 times, probably not going to be good value. The vast majority of the time, you're going to lose. Whereas if you'd played a $400 tournament with like 8K up top, you're going to win that a decent percentage of the time. But variance equals ROI. So for people that have the ability to put a lot of volume in and can ride variance, they can understand that, like, yeah, it sucks to play for 7 hours and lose with aces on the final table bubble. But if I can get in that spot 8 times, I'm going to make more money than I make playing in small field tournaments. And that's true. Variance can be a good thing. You know, if variance wasn't right where it was in poker, this game wouldn't exist right now. I'm fully confident of it. If there was more variance in poker than there is now, it wouldn't be a skill game. Everybody, it would just be a lottery, right? It'd be like bingo. And granted, there's a selection of the population that loves bingo. But we wouldn't love the game of poker. We wouldn't love playing a game where studying was worthless. If we did, we'd be playing bingo right now. We wouldn't be talking about poker. This would be poker and bingo. Gee, 54. So if there was too much variance, this game wouldn't have any skill to it. It wouldn't be any fun. But if this game had less variance than it had, this would just be chess. Could you imagine going to the WSOP in the summer, be like, I want to play the main event. You hop in the main event, and the second you register, you already know you're dead. Like, you have literally 0 chance of winning the tournament. You probably have 0 chance of making the money because the top 1,000 players in the world are there, and they're always going to finish in the top 1,000. And the only way you could ever compete with them would be to study 40, 50, 60 hours a week for like 2 years. What the hell fun would that be? Right? The where variance is in this game is perfect because it's just enough to balance the playing field to give everybody a fighter's chance, but it's not so much that working on your game and improving your game doesn't have benefits. So it's not bad. If you won every time you were supposed to win, you'd lose more than you would win. I know that's a crazy thing to wrap your head around, but it's true. If you won every hand you were supposed to win in poker, overall, you'd win way less in the game because you'd get outplayed by some wizards out there. You'd only need 5 people in a tournament to ruin it that were better than you because they would win 99% of the time. Whereas now, if you're in a field with 5 people that are better than you, you have a massive edge because of variance. Really, seriously, think about this. A chess tournament with 5 elite players, you're dead money. A poker tournament with 5 elite players, out of even 100, you're very live to win that thing. That is the power of variance. And then lastly, again, just zoom out. Stop thinking about this hand, this tournament, this table, this moment, this opportunity. Because in reality, just the fact that we get to sit at a poker table and play the game we love, we're already winning. We're already winning. It was always so sobering to me, the times I was out in Vegas for the summer, driving by people in the 110-degree heat, doing construction. And I'm driving to an air-conditioned casino to play poker. We have it so damn good that we just need to shift our perspective a little bit. Not put so much weight on the outcome of one situation. And understand that, like, the fact that we get to play the game is a win. The friendships that we have all crafted through this game, people we never would have met if it wasn't for poker, is already a massive win. The travel experiences we've had, the places we've gotten to see and go, beautiful places, is already a win. So who cares if your aces get cracked? It's going to happen 1 in 5 times. You're already winning. I hope this helps somebody today. Everything in here is the culmination of many years of work on my game and work on my mindset and work on my mentality. I'm really close to all of this. Like, I play sessions now, and yeah, I'll take a bad beat and I'll kind of like, really? But they don't hit me emotionally anymore. But it took work. I don't want to make it sound like you listen to a hour session here with me and now you're just like golden and life's perfect and you're never going to struggle with variance or the mindset again. I don't want that to be the mentality, because it is hard. And some people struggle with the emotional side of this game more than others. And you need to have grace for yourself. And there's going to be ups and downs. But this is something everybody can get incrementally better at. So my hope is that what we talked about today is a stepping stone to you gaining control over variance and not letting it have control over you. And then in turn, as you get more control over variance, you free your mind up to focus on things that are going to be better and more advantageous to you on the poker table. And I really think this is one of probably 3 things that took me from where I was to where I am today, both in poker and life. I had to get over thinking about what other people thought of me. I had to get my mindset in check and not let the emotions of this game overrun me. And I had to chill my goals. I had to relax and be patient and let the game come to me. Let the opportunities come to me. Appreciate it when things happen, but not have this expectation that every time I sit down on the felt, I'm going to be a winner today. And ironically, I'm more of a winner today than I was 5 years ago because I've let go of those things. 100%. Yeah. Everything is going to be okay. The notes are in the description for this video. If you joined late or you missed it or you want to go back and review these notes, you can go to the link. The Word document is right there. You can check all of it out. Tonight on the Rec Poker Podcast, youtube.com/@RecPokerCommunity. Actually, I think it's just /@RecPoker. Daniel Negreanu is going to be on tonight. If you guys are Daniel Negreanu fans, spoiler alert, I'm not. But if you are, come out. Check that out. And chase the dream tomorrow. But be on the lookout for another YouTube video on Wednesday. And again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Head over to rantpoker.com. Check out the 10 free lessons. Literally, they're 5 to 15 minute videos. The worst thing you're going to do is watch it and be like, that's 10 minutes of my life I never get back. You do that 10 times a day every time a TikTok clip comes up of somebody like spitting food out of their mouth or trying to eat surströmming. Don't look up surströmming videos, by the way. You watch more stupid shit in a day than any of that. Take 10 minutes out of your day. Go watch a free poker lesson that'll change the way you think about the game and simplify things for you a little bit easier. All right, everybody. I'm out of here. Until next time, we'll see you soon.